Evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out. I've got my yellow tape here so that I know where to stand if when you see the video of my first presentation here the entire time. So you'll see my arm every once in a while, but not in the video. My name is Chris Bosler. I'm with King of Prussia District. Thanks for coming out for the second public meeting that we're having as part of this connectivity study for Renaissance. Just to give you a little bit of background, also, let me also preface this to say that this meeting is being recorded. And also, before you leave, if you haven't signed in yet, please. We will be posting the minutes from this meeting as well as a link to the recording. So feel free to visit that or forward it to anybody that first of all, this is the agenda. But I'll leave that for Simone Collins, Anita Nardone, Jeff Creary, Liz, your last name? Crone, sorry, and Pete Simone will be going over that. Again, my name is Chris Bosler. I'm joined here with Eric Goldstein, who's the CEO and president of the King of Prussia District. The Upper Merion Township expanded the boundaries of King of Prussia Business Improvement District back in 2020 to include Renaissance Park, Innovation 411, and Discovery Labs and the GSK campus. As part of that, the first thing that we did was conduct a stakeholder study with the property owners to find out what they would like to see improved within the park, the former business park itself. And there were quite a few items that came out. If you're wanting to see the results of that study, you can go to our website at visitkop.com and you would go click on what we do tab and then also click on publications. There's a report there by Stan Tech, consultant on that, and recommend that you visit that. One of the things that came out of that study was that they were interested in seeing Renaissance Park get a new brand, a new logo, new signage. So we worked with a focus group to come up with a new logo for Renaissance Park, which you have seen if you're coming into at any of the different gateways. We tried to reference King of Prussia itself through the design, but at the same time, also alluding to the vast number of different technological life science companies that make up this exciting area within King of Prussia. This is the actual brand that they came up with, the logo. D2 Solutions was the name of the group that provided that. They're actually a company here in Renaissance Park, and they came up with something. We also worked with Stewart Associates, a local landscape architecture firm, to come up with more planting beds along Renaissance Boulevard and gateways. And we've been implementing those since 2020. And then also D2 came up with some additional signage for the area. We wanted to make sure that people were clear on where they were entering when they came into Renaissance Park. So we created the gateway signs that you see out there now. 3 gateways, the 2 gateways that have been there for a while, and then a new pedestrian gateway that we wanted to bring attention to so that commuters coming in from the surrounding neighborhoods or actually from Hughes Park Station would know where they were supposed to be walking to. Next phase of that signage project is going to be directional signage that's going to be built and installed within the Renaissance Park itself, just to outline where the actual buildings are. It can get kind of confusing when you're going through the different driveways. And then we also hold a number of different special events and add some additional amenities. So past few years, we've been having some food truck Tuesdays in Renaissance Park, as well as Wellness Wednesdays. And also we just installed a new beehive down by 2901 Renaissance Boulevard, and we'll be having some programming around that as well. And we also look at additional amenities that we can add to the area, including whether it be recreational amenities like an outdoor ping pong table. That's something that we've added in Moore Park, and it was very popular with ping pong tournaments and pop-up beer gardens that we had at that location. So that's just a little bit of a background. The other primary area that that the stakeholders, the property owners in the Renaissance Park area were interested in was pedestrian connectivity. And so that's when we went out and hired Simone Collins to come up with a new connectivity study to outline not only just for the property owners, but also surrounding neighborhoods to find out what connections they would like to see made to Renaissance Park, throughout Renaissance Park, and how those connections can be made to the adjacent neighborhoods. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pete Simone, and he'll properly introduce his team.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming out tonight. So in addition to myself, Anita Nardone is the project manager. She's a civil engineer with lots of great experience. Jeff Creary is our trail design landscape architect. So we'll be working with you over the next few months. The handout, you have our contact information. I mean, we don't have another meeting until November, but over the summer, don't hesitate to call us or email us if you have an idea, question, suggestion. That's what we're here to work with you and to come up with the best plan. Located just across the river in Norristown. We've been there since 2010. Some of the things we try to do in every project. We do a number of different types of projects. We've done over 120 or 130 trail and connectivity projects. That's a lot of what we do. We're sort of an old school landscape architecture firm. We do parks and trails and zoning and plan, site design and all those good things. We did Wilson Park, Wilson Park 20 years ago. This is, as I mentioned, we've done a lot of connectivity work. See the dots on the map, places that we've done. Shot of the bike lane in downtown Wayne that we did a couple of years ago. The Radnor Township that connected the school with the high school with the downtown and the existing Radnor Trail. So different types of trails tonight, so you understand. All have the same understanding what a trail is, because when you say trail, everybody thinks a different thing. So, and our partners, traffic planning and design. The traffic engineers are one of the most well-known regional traffic engineering firms. We work with them often, and they'll be looking at, especially for roadway intersections, and we're trying to get pedestrians and bikes over those safely. And as Chris mentioned, even though Renaissance Park is a limit, we're going to look outside those limits. I mean, we can't do this in a vacuum. It'd be silly to do a trail in the park or a sidewalk and not connect to something outside. And there's a lot of exciting things happening in the area. So, should mention, every year Pennsylvania does a state recreation study, and by far, trails and walking are the #1 most wanted facilities and the #1 activity that people want to do recreationally. So, it's happening all over the state. So with that, I'll turn it over to Anita. She'll take you through the scope and a lot of other hopefully interesting things.
Good evening and welcome, and thank you again for coming out. At least it wasn't raining for us, right? That was our bet on how we get everyone out. As Pete said, I'm a civil engineer, joining very talented landscape architects. And I've enjoyed working for Simone Collins for 2 years with great clients. And I do have to put a plug in for the district because this is the second project I worked on with the same team, the Moore Road project. And there's an energy about the district as there is about Upper Merion in general. So it's great for us to be back and participate. The scope of the project, I'm going to take you through basically a plan, a connectivity plan, a plan that is used for planning. It certainly can't be built from, right? It's not a construction document, but it takes a look at where we possibly can make connections for pedestrians, for bicyclists, while taking into account the entire picture of Renaissance Park, which changes, which has its challenges, which is nestled in, close to residences. It's such an interesting, the more Jeff and I look at it, the more interesting it becomes. And we'll show you some fun slides about that. So the final plan is a connectivity plan. And to get to the final connectivity plan #4, we will go through the public participation process with you, with SEPTA, with PennDOT, with Montgomery County Planning, with the Upper Marion Township staff, of course, but mostly with you folks, right? That, the beauty of a plan is the fact that everybody's had a chance to put their 2 cents in. Where are the challenges? What would you love? What would you like to get to, right? That's what we want to hear, right? So that you're going to review the existing conditions. You're going to be out here because we're so close. And gentleman from the first meeting was very kind. He's a property owner here, wants to take us around and show us. We, like Pete said, are available to come meet you. Anybody who'd like to show us something that really informs the plan. That's the beauty of being so close. So we'll review the existing conditions. Certainly, there has been a lot of planning around Upper Marion and Renaissance Park. So you can't put that away. We need to dig into what people said. It might be old, dated information, but it needs to be recognized as something, ideas people had before. So existing conditions and the previous data about this area are equally important. So those 4 things are project scope. Most important part about the 4th one is that the narrative report and the plan, the actual outline of this very unusual shape for Renaissance Park, will have tiled maps. So you can look at them closely and really see how, we're proposing for pedestrians and bicyclists and transit users, to get to the places they want to. So the plans, as well as cost estimates, phasing recommendations, and funding recommendations. This plan will be of no use to Eric and Chris unless it's beautiful and people want to read it, and it can get them some funds to actually put these improvements in place. So that's our scope. Our project schedule, we got kicked off pretty much at the beginning of April. I'm not hoping we will deliver that final report and plan toward the end of the year. We're looking to have our final public meeting, the 4th one, with the Board of Supervisors of Upper Marion, tentatively for their meeting is the middle of January. So what we'd like to do is to publish that final report and get it in people's hands toward the end of this year, have the overlap of 60 days so people can comment, especially all the stakeholders, and then put the final touches on it and publish it in January, in time, hopefully for the next round of funding applications that the district may want to use it for. Titled data and inventory. And this goes back to the concept I said about planning that's been done in this area. And this really, what you see on the bottom of this slide, really represents the important documents to start with. The Upper Marion Comprehensive Plan, right? This is planning area 9, Sweetland, studied by Safe Routes to Transit by the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, right? So that Hughes Park Station is a key priority to us here in this study. They've looked at it. It's 2017. As Chris mentioned, Stantec took all the ideas of the stakeholders back in January of 2020 to publish it in 2021 and D2. So to get back to what the comprehensive plan says in Upper Marion, pedestrian connections, whether they're sidewalk or trail, should be enhanced in order to provide safe pathways for people moving in and out of the Sweetland area. Connections between Hughes Park Station and Renaissance Business Park should be improved, like setting the tone for what this area has the potential to be. Like we said, it's such an unusual historic area, so many geological factors, railroad factors, just really interesting, going back to the roots of what it is and now making it work today with the challenges that property owners have, the economic times and how they use their properties, the changes between commercial and residential. All of these are the factors that are affecting Renaissance Park. So this connectivity plan has to be sensitive to that, right? And sort of look at it from all angles with all the input from the stakeholders. Go back to the Stantec study that Chris mentioned, getting together all of the stakeholders for a three-phase study. What are the opportunities and the issues that they're facing as tenants or property owners or residents? what are your ideas? What's the vision? What would you like it to look like? Number two. And what came out of it was a draft vision. Actions. It was 4. It's a great report. I definitely encourage you to take a look at it because you can really see the help me with that word, the specifics of it. Right. You got it. And they also had the results of their public opinion survey. Very detailed. Where did these come from? Placemaking. So Chris mentioned, obviously, that's something the district jumped on right away. You know, the importance and the beauty of that place in the community, the importance of land use mix, and then increased amenities, definitely very high on that survey where people's response, they'd like to see more things here. They'd like to see more food. They'd like to see more activities. They'd like to get there. So the very last one, the connectivity, very much included it as a large part of making a different part of those other visions, increased connectivity. That we got this project underway is that vision. Increased connectivity, again, back to the Stantec report, 6 items, and there they are. Increased pedestrian infrastructure, Renaissance and Horizon Drive, more crosswalks and bus shelters, road connections into the district, Crooked Lane or other locations, extending Renaissance Boulevard across Sweetland and somehow over to River Road. And number 6, shuttle service. I think this is really a good time to talk about then what this study is that we're doing. Did you have a question?
Talk through E.
I'm sorry.
The driver, item E.
Item E. When we get to the map, I think when we get to that, we'll definitely come back there. Absolutely. And again, these were just.
Because I mean, I see like the bubble, or the bus shelters.
Mhm.
There's quite a few around here. I'm just curious, like what drove that?
Right,
Like 3, 4.
right. And that will change too, because SEPTA is proposing change their routes that we've heard
But like
about.
within a very short distance, there's a lot of those.
Right, right. Don't know the full story about that, but certainly.
Well, when I was, I guess, just briefly mention that, updating the shelters. So the shelters themselves, not actually adding more, it was more of just updating them to something that looks nicer.
Probably. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, this is a good time to talk about the fact that when we, as Simone Collins, are coming to this connectivity study, our focus really is on pedestrian and bike access. You'll see of the 6 of them, there are some real roadway improvement items as well as transit as well. So what we're saying here in this study is that our focus is the multimodal. It's the pedestrian and the bike rider and transit, the transit riders who come off and become pedestrians, right? But we can't do that in a vacuum. If there are plans where people are expressing interest in roadway improvements of some regard to fulfill the vision of that Renaissance Park, then we need to take that into consideration when we're talking about pedestrian connections as well. So I just sort of make that clear that, it's connectivity, but it's not, we're connecting cars and roadways. It's really the focus is on the multimodal aspect.
With that connection of the roadways, what drives the issue for personnel or people walking? Because I know I'm turning code and all, walking around here was a very safe activity.
Mhm.
So if there's new entries or higher traffic coming through, that would drive it. Right now, I don't necessarily see unsafe conditions, but if you're going to increase that,
Correct.
and that's where I was asking earlier about traffic.
The traffic.
Is there intention on bringing more traffic through? Because that would drive a lot of this.
Good points. Thank you. Started off as a team, just an internal team, our site tour on a beautiful day. I mean, we've had some really lovely days this spring. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff now to kind of take you through what really, popped to us that day when we were out there, and kind of leads us into the rest of the discussion about our analysis, where we are, and Jeff will take us through a primer of how we're going to use a toolbox to sort of look at Renaissance Park. Jeff, thank you.
I'm just gonna dim the lights now that we've all had food and everything.
How come I didn't get dim lights?
You're gonna do it. All right, so right now, we're gonna take a look at just a couple of photos of things we saw. And so we want to take this trip, and I want to show you what we see as designers. And right here, what do we see when we came through here? We saw a really mature, well-groomed landscape. It's pretty. There are some really beautiful parts in there. Sure, it's a business park, but this is just a straight up photo taking. It's a wonderful, beautiful site. A lot of people like to utilize it for the walking. People during their lunch breaks like to use those hilly, holy side paths that they have going on. Really nice walking. You'll see cyclists in there. We know people are riding their bikes. We also know that there's a lot of runners utilizing. In fact, I think that there's probably more runners than there are cyclists coming through here. Then you take a look at the rolling hills. It's beautiful. Once again, just stop and you look at how well loved this site is. And then we take a look at the bus shelter. When we look at a bus shelter, we have to think about how do people get to that bus shelter? I can tell you right now, that bus shelter has a grass strip in it. So your feet are going to get wet unless you hop over to get to that. These are things that we like to look at, but also we notice that the curb cut, which isn't really a curb cut for this walkway, isn't by the bus shelter. So people are crossing the road and you have some type of inability to get across the road and you need to have something there for you. It really doesn't address those needs. But also we like to take a look at these roads. They are wide. Oh my goodness, this whole area has wide roads. It's just more roads than possibly needed for the volume of traffic that's in there. And once again, really wide roads. You can see that that's a tire line right there. So odds are they're not taking up the whole road. They're just in and can squirt. We have a lot of space. What can we do with that space? Is it needed for parking? I don't know. We'll see in a bit how much surface parking is in this area. But could we put a bike lane in there? There's a lot of space. And right now, I can tell you, there is plenty of space for a bike lane in there. Lots of space. Also taking a look at, once again, that mature landscape that I'm talking about. The beautiful, sweet curves that are fun to ride and just so you walk. Looking at the bus routes, we have learned that SEPTA is probably going to discontinue this route as of right now. It could change. With SEPTA, it's constantly changing. They're modifying their routes. They're serving people, and that's what they want to do. Right now, they don't have a lot of population coming in within Renaissance Park. So we'll see how that evolves with this project. It will be an ongoing investigation. Looking at the medians, once again, so much love. Someone's doing a lot of work in there, maintaining that landscape, beautiful roads, lots of trees, ever changing in with this landscape. Look at the new crossing. We were just talking about the crossing that you're so concerned about with the prior project that we were talking about now. But now we're looking at this crossing, how it is. At this point, this crossing, it's not too great, but we learned that they are going to put in pedestrian actuated light, so you can get across that that traffic, the street there, to get to Moore Park, to get to wherever you need to go, to get to the Route 100, continue on into Philly, where that crossing will be addressed. Looking at some of the existing walkways within this project area, they're small, but they're fun. They don't meet ADA guidelines in some areas. So we have to take a look and think about American Disabilities Act. We want to make facilities for everyone. Right now, these are really small. They're very narrow. You could not get two wheelchairs to go side by side on these routes. But also, they exceed some of the slope needs and regulations that the ADA has set. We're going to take a look at what's going on in the project area. One of the neat things about this project area, it's nestled in. You have 276, 76, you have the high-speed line, all nestled right in there. And to the east of that, you have the Schuylkill River. Highlighting what is Renaissance Park. This is our project scope. When I say project scope, I'm talking about where our project area is. But we're not limited to that. We're thinking outside.
So Church Road, technically not in there. Crooked Lane, not in there, but these are important connections because we know we have populations over in Hughes Park and Sweetland. How can we connect those populations? If people want to continue through and maybe someday get a connection to one of the best things that's going in this area right now, personally biased, Chester Valley Trail. Now, with the Chester Valley Trail, that new expansion is right there. It is so close. In fact, I was on it last night running, trying to think, how can I run into Hughes Park? And I didn't have a good, clear answer because of Henderson. So we take a look and we think, well, maybe we need connections over in there. But also, right across the river, you have one of the best trails in southeast Pennsylvania. Personally, I think it's one of the best trails in the Northeast alone, the Schuylkill River Trail. So we're gonna hop in a time machine and we're gonna dial it back. We're gonna go back to 1937. This is what this area looked like in 1937. A vast change. You can see there's a beautiful. There must be a great story. I don't know if that was the King of Prussia marble quarries. I know they were a little bit to the west here. Maybe that line came through there. But you can see that was a big industry at that time. And back in the early 30s, someone came up with Hughes Park. You can see there's a couple of houses in there, not many. But Sweetland, we know, has been there for a long time. Then you take a look out there in those other areas, some really old houses. What a neat neighborhood Sweetland is. But it's disconnected. How do you get to it? We can all drive to it, but could we walk to it? I don't think any of us really would want to. It's not very comfortable. So let's go to 1959. We take a look at Hughes Park. Once again, Hughes Park, it didn't take off. I don't know why. There's probably another great story with that alone. There were some more houses in there, some expansion into Sweetland. See that the quarries were still there, really old quarries. It didn't develop. But now let's fast forward to today. Wow, has there been a change and a fast change? Lots of new residential areas, lots of housing in Hughes Park. Sweetland expanded. We got, a ton of houses. There's so much going in here. Some older industrial that was there in 1959 has expanded. And now Renaissance Park from the 90s, building complete. Let's take a look at our mapping and how this mapping comes about. It's through GIS, and we get all these layers. We get layers from the county, who's represented here tonight. We get layers from HOSTA, which is a state repository for all this data. And we start piling on here and we take a look at what's going on. The darker areas are obviously the buildings. Then you see lots of parking. All this gray is surface parking. There is no lack of surface parking in this area. It is probably some of the densest parking in Montgomery County within this area. Of course, we still have the golf course. That didn't change from the 30s. That's an old golf course. It's been there for a long time. What we do is we start taking a look at it and seeing what's in there. We highlight the state roads. These state roads are really important to take note because this is under PennDOT's jurisdiction. We have to meet PennDOT's design guidelines, and we want to because they are very good at what they do. They like to make things safe, not just for cars. They like to make things safe for everyone. We also want to take a look at the existing sidewalks in here. There's some good sidewalks, not a lot, including the pathways in there. Some sidewalks over in Sweetland. But up in here, no sidewalks. It's a brand new spanking sidewalks up there on Horizon Boulevard and some nice connections right behind here. We also take note of the width of the road. That's really important because if we want to make this the most, what can we do with this? We got to know how wide it is. A lot of lanes can be 12 feet wide, but do they need to be 12 feet wide through here? Maybe. We're going to take a look at it. We're going to talk to our engineers. Can we make it even more narrow and get it down to 11 feet and have even a wider area for a potential bike lane? I'd also like to take note of the speed limits. Speed limits are really good to know. The higher the speed limit, the more dangerous it becomes for a serious incident to occur. So if we can get them lower, that would be great. So that's something we'll take a peek at too. We can possibly do that. And of course, inventorying all the stoplights. Those are really good traffic control devices. If I was riding a bike, and I wanted to get out onto the road, it's nice to have that stoplight there to know that I have a clear chance to get out into the traffic. So now we're going to go into the design world. So everyone understands where we are coming from and what we want to propose. And what we're going to do is we're going to take, we like to call it Trails 101, but it's multimodal things we care about, running, riding, walking. All these things are interconnected. This is how we look at it. So what we'd like to do is take a look at pedestrians. They're the #1 user group that we're looking at right primarily. But the #1, the best one, children. We can design a facility for a child. We have designed a facility for everyone because children, they think differently. They're more free spirited. They're not going to look out into traffic as quickly as we do. They're still learning. So they are our focus group. But of course, shopping or even just out for a stroll. These are all the pedestrians we like to look at. Active lifestyles. We know that there's active lifestyles out here. People like to go out and stroll. Or go out for a run. And at the last meeting, I was joking about, and I always love to joke about rollerbladers. I don't know how, but rollerblading is it's coming back. I was just riding this weekend, and I was out by Limerick, and I was on the Schuylkill River Trail. I saw rollerbladers out there. They're everywhere now. Other people we're going to take a look at are the cyclists. We have the experienced cyclist. Tell you the truth, experienced cyclists, they're going to go wherever they want. They don't care. They don't need a facility. They are confident. They will just go and just conquer anything they see. We have casual cyclists. This is what I always refer to as my sister. She's not that confident, and I always use her as my litmus test. Would I be able to take my sister on this bike ride? Would she feel comfortable on this road? And that's really helped me from a standpoint saying, okay, she wouldn't like this because the comfort level, which you'll hear us say a lot, is not that great. And then, of course, children's cyclists. If we design, once again, for a child, we have hit a home run. Where do you want a child to learn how to ride a bike? A lot of times people will say, I want to learn on a trail because there's no automobile traffic. But once they learn, where would you like them to ride? Trails, once again, comes up high, but buffered bike lanes also are very popular. We'll talk about it in a second. And then, of course, we have other users. One of the big top ones, dog walkers. Pandemic, boy, do you see dog walkers everywhere now. Bird watchers, once again, one of these weird things that came about after the pandemic. During my lunchtime walks in Norristown, I used to never see bird watchers. But now, every week, I see a bird watcher out in Norristown. These people are watching for birds. And believe it or not, there's a peregrine falcon nest out there, and there's a bald eagle nest, all within a mile of Norristown. So that's why bird watchers are out there. And of course, the big joke, I only put this in there because I'm from Buffalo, and I love snow. It's cross-country skiing. I don't think it's going to happen. Snow down here is just becoming more and more rare, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed and holding out hope that eventually we'll start seeing some cross-country skiers. So the design guidelines are numerous. There are so many, there's dozens out there, and they all have these specific designs within each manual. And not one can fit every use. That's why we look at all of them. Once again, really good one, designing streets for kids. They made the manual specifically for that. That's a really good one to look at. But also incorporating on-road bicycle networks. FHWA came out with that, and that is a really good one for bike lane. We'll take a look at that. But then we'll go into the main one. If there's one all-encompassing document, and this is the one I'd love everyone to look at, if we're going to get a chance to hop online, see how we design. It's AASHTO. AASHTO is a group of engineers and designers that got together and they made the design guidelines. They basically say, this is what a bike lane has to be. This is what the regulations are. But they also take a look at trails. They have set the standards for that. So here's a really, this is the Ratner Trail. At one time, most expensive trail in Southeast Pennsylvania. In fact, because of the lawsuits, was the most expensive trail in the United States. but that has long been surpassed. But you look at the design guidelines, you'll see that's clearance on the side there. There has to be a 2-foot clearance. We like to maintain that with trails for safety. And of course, one of the trails that we all love, Schuylkill River Trail, this is a portion that Simone Collins designed not too long ago, and you'll see lots of people out there enjoying it. The urban bikeway design guideline, this one's really fun. This is done by NACTO. This is, if you love pictures and drawings, this is very good to look at. It's brief, it tells you what's going on, it has clear, concise graphics. And we like to use this because they use a lot more cutting edge designs. When this was done, a lot of this was kind of a wow. It was informative, and you know, you weren't seeing it a lot. But now you look at Philadelphia and you say, oh, we got that, we got that, we got that. So we are catching on. We are moving forward with our facilities. One of the things we do is we propose a toolbox. And these are items that we are going to propose, you are going to propose where you want to put these within this design area. In this toolbox, it is going to change. It's going to expand, but shrink. The odds are we're going to add more tools. And these are just some of the tools we're taking a look at. First, foremost, number one, best tool, the tool that we're really pushing for are sidewalks. As we saw in that one map, there's a lack of sidewalks within Renaissance Park. It's very tough to walk around in here if you want to get from one end to another. Or even as we heard earlier, during the pandemic, you want to go for a walk. How can you walk to here? Or if you just want to walk around in the parking lots in the after. Crosswalks, they have all types of designs, but believe it or not, there's specific design guidelines. And we'll take a look here at the left. This type of striping has a lot of names. Piano keys, continental, zebra stripes. Those are the design guidelines for that. You have to have that type of crossing now if you use federal dollars. And of course, you use something fancy. You really want to celebrate that crossing. You want to make it vibrant. You want to change it up. You want to make it stand out. So when you're driving, you do notice that. And there's great ways if you want to brand it. Because now Renaissance Park has a really cool identity. Let's, expand upon it and celebrate. Speed cushions are really cool. They're removable, they're permanent. But one of the nice things about them is that they slow cars down without jarring your car too much. If you're in a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit, and you go over one of those at 25 miles per hour, depending on the speed cushions, you really don't feel them. They're very convenient. But also, if you need to fly by and you're in an emergency vehicle and you need to get through them, you can actually cross over. But one of the great things about that crossing over, cyclists can go right through them. It doesn't cause that jarring issue that cyclists hate when you hit that speed bump or the speed humps that you have seen in the years past. Take a look at the curb cut. We put in there ADA. All these things have to meet American disabilities. You're using private funds and you have special exceptions, but we always try to meet that. And the curb cuts you've seen being implemented all throughout every township in Pennsylvania, and we will be using them throughout this. Traffic flashing.
Just a quick thing, would that be through all of those paths? Or just the main roads? That one pathway you showed, that nice kind of scenic.
Does not need any ADA.
But it's not,
guidelines.
I mean, the slopes, you have the flat.
Yeah, just like I was saying before, definitely, they're not. We're not proposing to get rid of them, but we want to expand upon this now. Rapid flashing beacons, these are fun. When I was a kid, the crosswalk lights, 24 hours a day. No one cared. You became so immune to them. You just didn't see them. You didn't notice them. Well, now these are pedestrian actuated. You hit that button, they're high intensity, they're vibrant. When that lights up, you know someone's going to be in that crosswalk. Handman. Handman is the nickname given by PennDOT. It's actually a countdown timer. We all get used to them now. PennDOT implements them on their state roads. You hit the button, it tells you when it's safe to cross. Even now, you can have, they're audible. So they're not just, if you're visually impaired and you can't see across the street, you can now hear the signal when to cross. These are really great tools. Pedestrian Refuge Island. Every single time I will talk about this one because I use my father as an example. His knees, horrible, has terrible knees. He does not walk like he used to. So he needs extra time. This is a great space for him to have extra time. He can get out to the middle of the road and he can take refuge when needed, especially when it's a long crossing. Stormwater BMPs. BMPs, best management practice. We all know that rainwater is becoming a huge issue. We are having runoff like no other. Areas like this that have lots of paving. How can we collect more of that runoff water? Could we incorporate them into some of these areas? We're gonna take a look at that. Of course, the multi-use trail that we kind of talked about earlier. Wonderful. Is there an opportunity to put in a trail? There is. It's not a great opportunity, but there is a chance that we might be able to put in a small one, looking at some of the properties within this area. Sharrows we don't use as much as we used to. They work really well on 25 mile per hour roads. We don't have those within this project area, but it's a tool that we're not going to discredit right now. We might have potential for it. This is what we're looking at for cyclists. Bike lanes. We take a look at the left photo here. This is called a buffered bike lane. Not only is it buffered one time against traffic, but it's buffered against the parking. And this is really nice because it forces the cars to hug that curb and now gives a nice door opening zone for people. We have a lot of space for that. So maybe we could use that. Not enough room in some areas for a buffered area. But without a buffer, you can also put in just a normal bike lane. This gives cyclists their space. Also, one of the cool things that this does, it helps calm down traffic. When you have wide roads and you can start cutting corners and just going fast, you tend to speed up. But when it's narrow, you tend to drive a little bit slower. Other neat things, bike box. When a bike lane ends, you can put a bike box out there. What this does is it allows people to get out in front of the cars. So they're not worried about a car taking that right turn movement. That right turn movement is so nerve-wracking when you're on a bicycle. You're worried about, is this car going to clip me? Now you get the chance, you get to move out in front of them. They visually can see you and you can get across the street without having to worry about that right movement. Bump outs, curb extensions, something we'll take a look at. Not too sure if we can implement it because we don't know what we can do yet. We haven't designed it. And this is what we're trying to get to tonight. What ideas do you like? What would work well? Are there intersections that you feel are uncomfortable when you cross? Could this be a design solution for that intersection? So now we're going to go into the next steps. And we're going to start explaining some of the boards and go into discussions.
So I mentioned that part of the stakeholder visioning study was a very detailed public opinion survey, 3 different groups that responded. Again, take a look at them. They were great questions and great responses. We too are going to use a public input tool, which is called Wikimap. And don't be afraid at all. It's a fun thing where you literally can draw on the computer. You'll see the map of Renaissance Park and you can literally go on and say, I'd like to get from here to here. Then you can draw a circle, but this is where I'm afraid to cross. Or this is where I noticed it's kind of steep and cars wouldn't really see me. So it's a great tool. And we really encourage you, if you could, there's a flyer right here that Chris is holding up that has the QR code but we would love your input. You can even upload photos. It's a great tool for us. It can go right into our analysis. So we're asking if you would to take a few minutes. Since last week. Yeah, so our next steps. Our next public meeting, we will be doing the analysis and working on that plan to present the draft of the final plan on November the 16th. So we're going to take the rest of the summer to connect with all of the important technical stakeholders, the residents, all of the community groups that really want to give us their input on this plan. And keep adding to the map. So you'll kind of start to see it evolve. with those tools that Jeff had talked about. And we'll meet again on November the 16th. So we'd love to see you back for that. And so for anybody online, do we have anybody online?
No.
Right now, we would love to have you come up. We tried this at the last meeting and actually people were shy. They were very comfortable with their sweet potato fries and we couldn't get them to come up. But Jeff and I took their comments and wrote right on the maps. Desired routes were important things for you and where are the challenges? And we asked people to.
And so going through, it looks like slides 34 to 37. There's a lot of mention about Hughes Park and that area, but there's no mention, in fact, it's not even on the slides of Gulf Mills or anything down there. So is that part of your study? Has that been part of your study? Or are you only looking at, Hughes Park and that area? Because that is an area that I think safe to say different residents, and I'm part of the Gulf Minnesota Association, we are concerned because of the state roads leading there and the lack of egress into Hughes Park and quite frankly to Henderson Road. So where do we stand with that?
Right, so as Jeff said, the scope is the park itself, but the connections that you're talking about are important to everybody that is in there as a resident as well, right? So our analysis, Gulf Mills Station, of course, is on that map, and certainly, again, is not part of, directly affected, but people want to get there as well, right? So the connections that Pete has said outside of Renaissance Park, how they would lead there and what would impact and what would be the challenges.
But the concern is that based off of those slides, nothing towards Jones Road, and that major intersection was noted on any of those slides.
Yeah.
So
So like,
basically, you're looking for us to circle that and map.
Exactly.
But
right, yeah, so it's not like, so we haven't done the analysis yet. We're trying to show you the important things that we'd like to elicit from you.
But again, just looking at it theoretically, do you have influence over that?
I think we have influence in the fact that, this study is going to be presented to the township. And so the business district hopefully will implement the connectivity improvements in the business park. And then the township will take this advice and look at those other connections. So, it's a process. It takes some time, but I think if the connections make sense, if the ideas make sense, our experience is they often move forward.
I see those connections have a huge impact on West Gear.
Yeah.
Because if there's no flow, then you don't have the people, the big buses,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you said, there was like.
I mean, exactly. How are they gonna get there?
Yeah.
Can't get there.
they've got all these neighborhoods, but they don't go
Right.
anywhere.
And Gulf Mills,
Sidewalks to nowhere.
and Gulf Mills Golf Club, and part of, I'm going back 15 years or so, part of the Green Space Committee for Upper Merion Township back then. The Renaissance and Renaissance and Discovery Labs was deemed as green space, a potential green space for the township to purchase if it were to become available, specifically for low impact use for trails and for connectivity. Yeah. We're not including that. And that's kind of a big thing when, again, if you're there over the weekends, you can see that a lot of the bike routes and the bike trails and the bike races go through Renaissance and then they come down Jones Road to get over towards Conshohocken and the trail over there.
Yeah.
They're not really, Chester Valley Trail is new. They're not really going that way. They're going this way.
Yeah, again, every connectivity study we do, we look outside our boundaries. For example, our firm is consulting right now to West Conshohocken Borough. We're talking about a new pedestrian bridge under Fayette Street Bridge. That's something West Conshohocken is pursuing. We think it'd be a great idea, just like you mentioned, to somehow get from this area over to the Schuylkill River Trail, right? And as Jeff mentioned, to get to the Chester Valley Trail. So even though, don't get hung up on there's Renaissance Park and the bid's paying us to do that, we're going to look beyond that. And that's why your suggestions are really important.
Again, I've been here 20 years. And so for 20 years, we've been pushing for it. And the area into Hughes Park, which is the walking area close to the,
Could you point out on there what she's talking about? You know what I mean? Exactly what you mean.
Down lower toward the 320, the
So
bottom.
Jones Roads is down here
Oh, I know where it is. I'm just looking for it on the map.
in the
Yeah.
320.
correct, like Valagaming half cut off down there.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Almost
so,
physically,
pardon me?
almost
Oh,
physically.
yeah, so,
That's where you don't
and
wanna
yet,
walk.
and yet you've got a major exit from the Schuylkill Expressway, you know, heading west there. So to not include that is huge, because anybody coming west to get to this area is most likely going to take the first exit, and then they're going to have to go up and wind around Jones Road and go that way, which is not wide. Valgamingo, obviously not regulation size.
Mhm.
Jones Road, not regulations.
Very old
Slow.
roads.
Exactly. So, you know, how can that be helped to, again, filter more traffic outside of that
let me
area?
give you one example.
Onto Henderson.
One of the things we've just looked at, we haven't started planning yet, is the connection along 320, along the golf course. There's a strip there. If the golf course is amenable to having a connection, an off-road trail to the Gulf Mill station, wouldn't that be nice? So you had a connection to that station also, an off-road safe trail, because that's a busy road. We're going to explore that. I don't know if it's going to go forward, but those are the types of things we're going to look at. We're going to look at how to get to West Conshohocken. How do we get to the Schuylkill River Trail? How do we get to the Chester Valley Trail? How do we make those connections?
Also, part of the Stantec study was part of those questions of their survey was very detailed. How you responded to the survey, get to Renaissance Park. What is, and literally tallying up which directions people are coming through. So that gives us a lot of good base information from that.
So who's responding? Is it, I guess, is it now? Because, I mean, I would assume that it is probably the lowest occupancy rate in 20 years. So you're not really getting,
Talking about the offices?
yes,
Well, that's
the
what
current
it is.
people in Renaissance. You're not really getting the commuting
Well,
traffic.
is it going to go up, or do you think it's going to go down?
It's got to go up or else no one's going to buy it. Yeah, I mean, that's why we're all here, because it's got to go up.
Well, it
Okay.
might, or it might go to another use in the future.
Oh, but they're not going to, I mean, they're not going to turn it all in
That
parkland.
use
They're
should
gonna,
be-
they're making it into,
Well-
it's zone.
You should drive this discussion though, because if it's a biotech park, it's gonna lot to, you know, look different. If it's all residential, because you talk about children walking and all that.
Right now.
If that's a biotech park, you know,
Well, everybody wants biotech, right?
No, I'm saying right
Every
now, that's
vacant
what it
office
was.
building, they want to go biotech. But there's only so many of those biotech companies. As an example, I'll just tell you, we're doing a study right now for Whitman Township, where there are several very large offices that want to convert to residential. So we're looking at that from a comprehensive plan level. Is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? What's the impact on traffic? What's the impact on services? I'm not saying that will happen here. It's an option that
so
might
when that
happen.
Vision was done, it all gets back to vision, right? So when the visioning, said Stantec did the visioning, what was the vision?
Well,
I mean, there were these buzzwords. Well, is this seeing this as an office park or as a
And
residential?
I think they did it in a funny time. It was right at the cusp of COVID, right? And so our
So
whole,
it's dated.
20 to 21.
yeah, our entire concept of working in an office and working at home has changed. So it's a brave new world. And all we're saying is whether, you know, gee, maybe we'll get 10 biotech companies here. Great. Or it could go to another use. We don't know. All we're saying is whoever is working or living or going there, we want to make them make them able to commute by walking or cycling in addition to an
Their
automobile.
experience is gonna be different, you know, what's going on there.
Not really.
If it's a quarry,
Not-
if it's a quarry, it's gonna be different.
Well, we know it's not going to be a
If it's
quarry.
gas stations, if it's, but what I'm
It won't be
saying
a gas
is,
station.
again, like, are you gonna bring your kids over here if it's a huge biotech park? No.
It is. but it can't all
Actually,
be fun.
You're
I would disagree.
Yeah, but
If you look at the Radford
Right
Corporate
now-
Center,
Let's go one at a time, guys.
yeah.
And I'm just trying to like, because there's a budget at some point, right?
Yeah.
I wanna make
Great.
sure that
Yeah.
that's.
Well, there's a scope. Number one, we have to remember there's a scope. That's it right
Yeah,
there.
which is.
And then within that scope, let's think about how we are going to connect. So you are a pedestrian. if you work for biotech or you're gonna pump gas, how are you gonna walk to that gas station?
Well, why would
No,
I?
no, wait.
Why would I be walking?
How are you gonna walk to it when you get off of the train? On what sidewalks? So we don't know what those sidewalks are yet. That's what we're doing with this project.
Got it.
We want to get someone to be able to walk. Let's say you get this new business that people are gonna want to come in from the center city. You really want that young hip crowd. They're not gonna want to buy a
So
car.
that makes sense, because that's a vision saying,
Correct.
again, destination, but if I don't
So
know where
all
they're
these
going,
uses,
I can't plan it.
how are you gonna walk to them? How are you gonna
Right.
ride to
Well,
them?
I get that.
Almost all
Otherwise,
these
you're gonna have
uses-
beautiful park, bikeways
We-
that
we-
go nowhere.
We can plan it though. I mean, this
Well,
is
we can
not,
always plan it.
no,
Whether
this
we
is
pump
not
it.
gonna turn into parkland, okay? The ground's too valuable. Nobody can afford it.
But I mean.
So
you
it's
said
gonna
that-
be-
That road's really, let me just finish. That road's really wide. I drive that road. It's not that wide. When you're coming down,
Okay,
right? I mean, so I'm just saying, it's just making sure we're just not painting stripes on roads to spend money on a bike lane that's never gonna be used. If it's gonna be used, I'm all for it.
I ride through here.
I walk through here every day. I rarely see people biking. They're on 320, they're going through Balagamingo, cutting through, which is very dangerous. And I know that's outside of the scope of.
so do you think if there was a connection through Renaissance Park from the Chester Valley Trail to the Schuylkill Valley Trail, people would ride through it? Okay, okay.
But it's only in the middle. You gotta connect it.
I understand that. That's what our job is, to look at those connections. I mean, this building, this brewery is a great example of a new, I mean, 20 years ago, there were never breweries in office parks. This is a relatively new phenomenon. Why? Because this serves the people who work here. It serves the people who live around here, so things change, land use change. I think the point I'm just trying to make is there's going to be some use in Renaissance Park. We don't know exactly what it is in the future, but it almost doesn't matter. I mean, it's not going to be a heavy industrial use where you have toxic stuff. It's probably not going to be it's not going
Yeah,
to, there's no more big boxes, right? We're not going to build a big box place here. The road connections are marginal enough that you're probably not going to have a warehouse center. There's not going to be an attractive place to do a distribution center. So there's only a limited number of choices.
We can't, there's no way to know, or even, I mean, I'm not saying that we can revisit it, it would be wonderfully good, but is there any way to note or for you to note that there is definite demand for, I think it was I'm not sure, slide 33, about that, Hughes Park walking, like opening it back up as an additional ingress egress for auto traffic.
This goes, once you
Yeah,
start.
yeah, I mean, yes, to everything you said. We're gonna look at all those things. I mean, again, don't think of the limits of Renaissance Park.
Well, I mean, it is, it abuts Renaissance Park. and
Hughes
it
Park,
goes-
right.
Right, and Hughes Park, and then theoretically it goes on to Shoemaker, which was, is a commercial zone where.
We purposely
Residential.
zoomed out on this
Okay,
for a reason, because we want to know,
yeah. 'Cause
and we
it's-
want it in writing.
Oh,
Where's
yeah,
the
well,
rate?
put it right.
Writing.
Yeah.
And then, once you tell us what you want, Liz has been putting this all down, so it's down in the right.
So the other challenge, and again, I love this park and I love it, and I call it a park, there's those natural areas that we walk through. I don't think if you rebuild them, they would be the same, because they're gonna have to unfortunately and unfortunately follow the regulations you're gonna require, like coming up the road, I'm trying to remember which building there is, but it's like the slope that's there. As a walker and an exerciser, it's great, but that's not an ADA slope. So
One that goes in the
would that
woods.
just be left alone and then you would just have another trail, or I'm just curious what you're thinking.
Don't we have the crystal ball here to know exactly
Runs
where
to
it
nowhere,
goes?
so, yeah.
When
This
we
is
have
it.
a redundant
It's-
structure next to
the
it,
road.
a structural sidewalk, that will work as a sidewalk and work as a walking path, it could happen, we see it a lot.
But don't be confused. ADA is written purposely vague, right? And it's where it's feasible. So if we have a and also, you're thinking of ADA like a ramp. You can have an ADA except, you can have a trail that's ADA compliant. It can be 8% for 200 feet. And then it has to level off.
The area I'm talking about is, and again, I'm more than just trying to get an understanding, would those just be abandoned and.
No, we're not going to abandon them. It's just not an ADA trail.
It could be up. It could actually be upgraded because that can mean that.
Well, again, we haven't looked at them yet. My point is, not every trail has to be ADA accessible.
Which is interesting, because you know, there's the land behind your house.
Yeah.
I talked to Greg Wax about putting in trails back there.
Yeah.
He said, oh, we'd have to be ADA compliant.
Well, Greg might be incorrect.
Interesting.
He's a supervisor. He's a great guy. He's a supervisor, but he's not a planner.
That's behind, between Jones and Balagomingo, that's owned by the township.
And sorry?
Yeah, it's further south.
So,
So it's not far.
Yeah,
That's the point.
I'd say that's.
Yeah.
so I'm really confused. Maybe you can help me.
You know, since this is existing, that's.
You're being hired by Renaissance Park.
By the King of Prussia district.
Okay, the king.
The business improvement.
Right, the
district.
bid.
Yep.
You're being
Just
hired by
doesn't
them
make sense.
to work out
Thank you.
connectivity to things I would imagine, like accessibility for
Thank you.
potential employees to be able to get from, let's say, Center City or Phoenixville, or, you know, whatever, from the trains and the buses into where the offices and the workplaces are.
Or they might drive there and at lunch, they might want to go out and take a walk.
Okay, but we have to get them in without disturbing the neighborhood around it to a great extent. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why we're even talking about all this land that's like up there and down there. It doesn't seem within your scope. I mean, and if I'm
We keep
sounding,
on going back. I can tell you right now, this is our scope.
yeah,
This is our primary focus.
that's what I mean.
This is where we're gonna look at fine details. But we tend to not stop there because we now have the Chester Valley Trail. It doesn't take a whole lot to continue that connection. We now finally have a sidewalk over Route 100. We all know that bridge was hated. It was narrow, but now there's a sidewalk, there's a shoulder, not a great shoulder, but it's an improvement. So that's one step. So maybe you want to ride your bike to work. That's why we tend to take a look at outside.
Ride your bike to work in Renaissance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, just to clarify, when we're talking about scope too, when I'm Chris with
Yeah.
the Prussia District. So when we work on multimodal projects, the funding that we get, we have to only use that funding within our boundaries.
Exactly.
However, one of the good things about the studies is that you can point out other issues that need to be addressed in the future. It might not be by a King of Prussia district, but it may be by some other group that is able to take this information and say, okay, there's another support for making another connection maybe down at, whether it be to the Chester Valley Trail outside of the King of Prussia district boundary or to the Schuylkill River Trail down to West Conshohocken. All that information can still be presented in court. We may not be able to act on it directly ourselves, but we can certainly to Upper Merion Township Board of Supervisors, the county, all that information can be documented in writing.
What's gonna happen is you're gonna
So
see
you were
a map
talking-
like this.
Wait a minute. You were talking earlier about some bike path that wasn't wide enough for two wheelchairs to
That was a.
ride side by side.
Mhm.
And on the other hand, you're building a business community, whether it's recreational or, like, and hopefully to extend the day. You have the evening use and maybe in the day use, but then why would you want to make narrower roads to accommodate two wheelchairs riding side by side?
We're confusing a couple things here. So first we'll go,
Well, you did say it, or I wouldn't be sticking with me.
you're actually combining two slides. So let me explain this. I'll pull up the analysis. Right here is the photo that we showed, that narrow walkway. That was a walkway, it was not a bikeway. It's about 3.5 feet wide of asphalt. ADA guidelines say 5 feet, so you can get two wheelchairs. It's not
That's
a
the way
bikeway.
it is, two wheelchairs.
That's what we look for.
Oh,
It doesn't have to be that way. You can make 4 feet, but at
but
some
you just
point.
said it could be.
Wait, I'm explaining it.
Yeah.
Hang in there. I know I want to interject. You can make it 5 feet further up so wheelchairs get past each other. That's why we shoot for 5 feet for ADA guidelines. So these walkways don't make that, but that sidewalk, it sure does. It matches it, it's 5 feet wide, you can get 2 wheelchairs by them. Now, let's talk about these roads. Why are these roads so wide? Right now, they're over 12 feet. In fact, I have a
Steep
great,
grading. I mean, that's part of it. It's pretty steep grading coming in there.
that won't affect it.
Slip angle of your tires, yeah, well,
No, it won't. We can talk to the engineers. What happens is that it's just really oversized. Was it gonna be on-street parking? Could you get 2 cars through there? Yeah, you could almost, if it was like Montgomery Avenue, where you have 10-foot and 11-foot wide lanes, you can make it through there. But does it need to be that wide? Could we make that into a bike lane and have, traffic calm?
Yeah, a great example is First Avenue Road Diet. If you remember, First Avenue used to be 2 lanes. District did the traffic study. They found that there's no way there's that much traffic where we need 2 lanes. So they made it 1 lane. They have a bike lane. Now, what that does, as Jeff mentioned, when you narrow a lane for a motorist, as a motorist, you will slow down.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes it safer, right? So the reason you would get rid of some of the width for the vehicles is to make it safer, and you don't have the volumes in here that require 2 lanes, and you can't fit 2 lanes on those roads with a median anyway.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay.
So let me just do a quick rewind. In our mapping, you are going to see final report, go back to a plan like this. It's going to not be detailed, but we're going to take note of areas to the south if you want to go, other things. But when we get into the nitty gritty, plans are going to be focused in here. That is what we need. But we do care about what's outside of this community. That helps you out. The detail is within scope. The general ideas would be a big problem.
Point is, if there's a bunch of great sidewalks, but they don't go anywhere, then what good are they? Then nobody can access them.
Well, except that they,
It's the connectivity of the.
Eventually, yeah.
No, eventually, like for instance, the sidewalks they put on when they put in the new 76 revamp, that sidewalk of Southfield Road. I actually see people said, no one's ever gonna walk on that sidewalk. I see people on that sidewalk all day long.
We hear that all the time. In fact, we heard tonight. We put bike lanes in, no one's gonna ride, but in 100% guarantee you,
Yes.
it's gonna be a full ride. You're the beast.
Are people riding in Moore Park where the bike paths were put in?
Yeah, they're, I mean, again, it's still coming out of the pandemic, we're still.
True.
Those people, but there are definitely more people that are riding bicycles there. We're finishing up, the linear park that would then connect both, North Gulf Road all the way over to in July.
Oh, right.
We're working with Valley Forge Historical National Park and Upper Marion Township to put in a trail that goes from the historical park all the way down to the Valley Forge homes, Village of Valley Forge, I mean. So, there's certainly a lot more increase in trails. And so once we make those connections and you're starting to make the connections down here, network that people are able to utilize throughout Upper Marion, but also throughout the county to get around.
So I know I got here late and I apologize. I have a existing commitment, but I hope you realize that you walk out of Renaissance onto Holston. There's literally signs that say you are not allowed to walk here. That's how bad it is.
Oh, boy, you just hit a real nerve with me.
Right.
Those PennDOT signs kill me. Fortunately, that's a regulation that PennDOT has established, that it is
Oh,
not
really?
safe cross, or not, I won't say not safe. It is not a crossing that meets regulations by PennDOT's use. So you can upgrade it and get rid of those signs.
And that is a part, I just wanted to say, with all these things we're talking about, scope out of scope, where Jeff Hickman from the township was here, he, represents the Upper Marion Township Transportation Fund, and he was very specific that the whole scheme, you heard he's crooked, that section, and, trying to offload some of the volumes to the east of Renaissance. Things that the Transportation Authority is planning, let alone what the county is looking at, right? Your scope to what we're talking about in Renaissance with an ear toward
Okay.
everything you're all saying, the dots all start to get connected, right? The funneling of money, you know. The county can point to this study in the district and Upper Marion doing this, this, and this, is why their project works well. PennDOT can say, this is completed, this is completed, so maybe we can, you know, look at things differently. It all starts to build.
No,
I
I
would
live,
love to use the new bike trails, the new walk trails. It's just getting to them.
yeah, we need.
That's part of it. And that's why I was more like, you know, pointing out, I don't see bikes there. Just, it's very dangerous getting there. I mean, like the same reason I was telling somebody, I drive to here and
Yeah, I
then.
will drive with bike
Yeah.
too. That's what
And
I
I'm
do.
getting out literally a quarter of a mile.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the thing,
And I know that's out of your scope, but. it's-
you know, we've been doing, this year, this is our 30th year of doing trails as a firm. We are still in the infancy in this country of trails and pedestrian connectivity. Go to most countries in
Go to
Western Europe.
Berlin.
You go to most countries in Western Europe, people are on bikes and walking all the time. So it's the future. We're just starting.
Get ran over.
I was speaking, I mean, I think we're all obviously pro trail, pro pedestrians, pro bike. And I have no idea if anything, ADA, PennDOT, whatever is allowable for impermeable or like I'm sorry, the pervious pavers is that allowable? Is that something that can be done? Because again, to hopefully lower a little bit of the impervious.
The runoff to the
So
creek.
the problem with Kirby's.
Right.
It's a lot. Come out those vacuum, you actually have to clean it up.
Right.
They love it. It is great. It is wonderful.
Yeah.
It actually does work. It's so much fun to see the videos online when manufacturers go out there.
Right.
And they come out with these big 50-gallon drums, they pick them over, it goes right in. It's great. And if it could be affordable, yeah, it will. And it's been noted already. So we're jotting down that Ruby's would be great.
Yeah, I mean, because again, the residents are getting the bulk of the water runoff, you know, from this area, and any increase, even trail wise, is an increase in impervious space.
And also with their, I mean, not just, also please do for when you're up there writing ideas down and stuff like that. We're not just talking about trails either. So we would be talking about stormwater reduction strategies, BMPs, best management practices to include whether they be planting beds, whether they be swales or rain gardens. Those are all types of things that you can include that go trails. And in a lot of instances, we have to include those in order to funding purposes with the state, but also amenity areas. So if there are specific areas where you want open spaces, where it would be nice to have, or even types of businesses that you would like to see. I know that from the stakeholder study that we did in 2000, they were talking about how they'd like to see more service retail within Renaissance Park, restaurants, something, activities, you know, just convenient. Because if the 300 unit residential project moves forward at 2901, which they said they're going to start construction on that by the end of the year, I mean, you're gonna have residents in Park, Sweetland, I mean, so you don't have to go beyond this area in order to get to the retail that you need to. Those are other options that we'd like to see as well.
This is great where I'm gonna plug the boards. We have 3 boards up here. And if you're wanting to put it down in writing, we are gonna photograph this. And what we have challenges. So this board, we like to know challenges. Are there roads that you view as a challenge? You don't like crossing here, or I can't cross at mid-block because it's illegal, it's jaywalking. And the corners are just too far to go around. That could be a mid-block crossing, so that might evolve. That's why we want the challenges. Then we take a look at the desired routes. Well, I know the other night, I was riding last week. I was gonna come down here and let's mess around in the parking lots because I love doing it down here. I was on the trail. I just didn't feel like dealing with Henderson. I'll ride on it because I go visit my cousin who lives up a little bit north. I'm not a fan of it, so I would love a desired route that connected over to them. We want to know it. Or if you want to connect to the south, because we heard a lot tonight. There's a southern one, Gulf Mills. Really nice new upgraded station. Could that be a route? Then we go and we look at the destinations. Well, we know Gulf Mills, that station, it's a destination. People are going to it. Others set the stops along the high-speed line. We know this place is a destination. I'm really excited to see how this evolves, because we can look at the Strava data, which is an app that maps it. You can start seeing lines evolve around Conshohocken Brewery. I don't know why people love doing that. Actually, I know exactly why. Because Conshohocken Brewery opened right on the trail, and they have evolved a culture around cyclists. Right? Cyclists love riding here. So when you say, are people gonna ride here? Guaranteed, you're gonna get cyclists coming here. This is, not a lot of people know about this spot, but they're gonna learn about it. So let's talk about where those destinations are. Let's get them written down. So we can take a look at it, get it in writing, and then we take photos of it, incorporate it on the boards. But we can also let Upper Marion know what else is going on outside of here. It's just, get your voice heard. Take it down and write it.
And also, if you want to go online, you can do it online too, on the wiki maps.
Yeah, the wiki map. If you want extra flyers, please take them. Yes.
Just one. There has been a difference of opinion for many years about the connection of Renaissance and Crooked Lane elevation. Battled with some plot for at least 25 years. Ever since Mr. O'Neill first proposed it is being part. We understand that there are groups of geologists, it's a great evidence. But the problem still remains that Crooked Lane has, it's not a good connection. It's right into the neighborhood, it's Park neighborhood.
Double market.
You're putting traffic right onto the bridge over the trolley tracks at your piece.
When you say traffic, can you?
It's supposed to be a left turn.
Are you talking automobile traffic or?
Automobile traffic coming out.
I understand that, but the point was raised earlier, why don't we bring out the road again? Look. If the goal is to take traffic,
Could I just stop and say that was with the previous study?
no, that was a point that one of the participants tonight raised. Is that?
That was what I was talking about, an additional
From the
ingress,
previous
egress,
study.
saying that.
Because originally they're supposed to be 4.
And saying that while walking trails, and we're talking about things going on in there, still, and I think it's something that we're asking that you talk about, is there is still a major concern with 300 unit going in there, wants to do more commercial, that,
2 warehouses coming onto 320.
yeah.
We've got FedEx trucks that told the township they wouldn't be there. You actually can't get out of our neighborhood.
That's something that we need. I think it is within the scope of that, the rest.
Sidewalk, like a sidewalk that goes.
But when it comes to traffic, out here, shoot.
Right, but you said you
Yeah,
were
but that's-
considering the
Yeah,
external.
so yes, we understand that's a concern. It's always been a concern, but I love my car. I love my 7 bikes.
But I understand, but I think it's safe, but it's safe to say that I'm assuming that
Great area.
probably one car for 300 units. We have Discovery Labs, which has been approved for over 4,000.
Required to have one parking spot for every bedroom. So if it's a 2-bedroom,
Okay, there you go.
300 unit, it's gotta be 600.
Discovery Labs has over 4,000 parking
No,
spots.
They have,
slated.
they have 3,200 and they're getting.
Existing and they're adding 2,500.
I can say that this is an underlying issue. that's-
Overall,
You're already, you can't even get out of it.
So, yeah, I mean, so I don't think because you're bringing the commercial and into this area, then you
Invalid.
can't just assume that everybody's going to suffer with it.
Yes.
I mean, well, I think it's money. We do as much as I can.
We might there, we're like, hey, what is
And sports, USDA is there, we'll underwrite it. Like, no, I'm serious. We write grants.
That's a really good idea.
The township should have to.
I'm like a really interesting. Yes, we are not going to be a usually. We start bringing them up through here. Sure. This is a step in the right direction. with this project. I can see that
So
this
go
is.
downhill, down the like the steep hill.
Long before this
And then you
project.
could walk the bridge.
I can see the compassion. I don't understand it.
To be honest, that's
Because let's face it,
safer walk
there's
path than it is.
No fun.
It's not just safe.
Because I won't
When
walk
you've
there.
been personally hit, when your cars have been hit, when your house has been run into,
Yeah.
which the police can say, Valley Domingo Road, you guys are taxed, quite frankly. Well, no, I mean, you're overtaxed by, trying to take care of state roads because the township is having to take care of traffic on state roads. It is a super big deal. It's more than traffic. It is.
Which I'm gonna ask, let's get the chiefs in. Not to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I wanted to be here tonight because, but when I look at it.
Well, you can see to the offset, because then I'm like, it's kind of funny,
And
like,
activity
and I know.
rails that are.
I'm like,
Now.
I'm like, let me get the aesthetics.
So we have to look at the fall.
You're going from
Like someone gets
a
stuck by
train
a day
station
and
or wherever you're going. You're not gonna sit
Well,
down
rapidly
and watch
be
it.
able to get.
So that's
My,
my,
my point of being here is to make sure that 5 foot width on crossings and things of that nature could accommodate a UTV.
Sure.
I'm trying to get for the municipality so that we can rapidly go in and help our services there in need.
UTV being like
So
fixed
there's-
Like a utility, yeah, called facilities.
Right next to the.
They make them for the fire service, any EMS service, or reverse, right? So if we had a small fire.
It's the building right next to this one.
There's not a huge build railroad.
Easy to get there with a 90 gallon, and then there's on the other side. Than $1 million fire truck that's not conducive to get there.
And they
Also,
work
having
on like
said
during
that, they
COVID,
make hold down.
they graded it, then it's like.
If I can have a paramedic with a litter that's certified
Apparently it was just.
safety and transport patient, it's important to make from public safety to be able to get to those folks.
It's peace of mind for the people.
So that's why I think this might be an outlier that they weren't thinking of.
No, it is now. Actually, it is something we came up with. If there's a stop at 76, I can't get to my house. I literally will go behind, park on Diana's Court, go through my neighbor's backyard to the house. And it's happened more than once. So I'm with you.
Traffic is tough for us.
Like, I just, for the first time, I just retired. So for the first time, I'm driving down.
Oh, sorry, it's at like 11 o'clock.
And the traffic is just as bad as it was when I went out of work at 5 o'clock, because I was working from home. And I'm shocked. I did not know that it had built up to that level. So, are you also suffering? Because I keep worries like about your main interests. You're gonna have shuttles going to when I lived in exposed from Gulf Mills, maybe to.
It's not on the plan at this point.
Thank you all for being in the future. That's in study. It's a very specific study. Yeah.
So I actually.
Yes.
Did it, but I thought it would be
So you know.